You know, there's this one specific sentence, just 6 simple words, really, that has probably haunted, I don't know, millions of professionals throughout their entire careers.
Oh, I have a feeling I know exactly which phrase you're thinking of. It's basically the ultimate corporate cliche at this point, right?
Yeah, exactly. The feedback that just completely ignores the actual substance of your work.
Right, the dreaded
I
diagnosis.
do quiet in meetings.
Yep, there it is. And, the implications behind that phrase are just incredibly heavy.
Heavy and, quite frankly, I think historically weaponized. Because for decades, if you heard that, it wasn't just like a neutral observation about your vocal cords, you know?
Oh, absolutely not. No.
It carried this massive unspoken implication that you lacked ideas. Or worse, that you were somehow unqualified to even be sitting at the table.
Right, because we fundamentally conflated volume with competence, which is, it's a remarkable cognitive bias, if you really break it down.
Wait, a cognitive bias? How
Yeah.
so?
Well, psychologically speaking, humans evolved to pay attention to loud, sudden noises, right? It's a primal survival mechanism. But in a corporate setting, we accidentally mapped that instinct onto intellectual capability.
Oh, wow. So we just assume the loudest thing is the most important thing.
Exactly. We assumed the person speaking the fastest or dominating the physical space naturally had the best grasp of the complex data, which mathematically is almost never the case.
I mean, it makes total sense. It's like the difference between a smoke alarm and a thermostat.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Right. A smoke alarm is loud. It absolutely demands your attention, but it doesn't actually regulate the environment. The thermostat just sits quietly on the wall, processing data, and actually controls the climate.
That's spot on. The thermostat is the one doing the actual work.
Yeah. And I want to speak directly to you, the listener, right now. Because if you have ever been on the receiving end of that too quiet feedback, this deep dive is entirely for you.
Yes, absolutely. Because the rules of the game have completely changed.
Exactly. We've been looking at this incredible research into how communication is fundamentally fracturing and rebuilding itself in the modern workplace. The extrovert playbook is effectively dead.
It really is. And we're not just talking about superficial changes in office etiquette here. We are looking at a profound transition in how we evaluate professional worth.
Yeah, the strategies that worked in like 2016 or 2020, they are completely obsolete today.
Completely.
So our mission today is to figure out exactly how you can survive and actually thrive without ever having to fake extroversion again.
Which is such a relief for so many people.
Well, massive relief. But to do that, we have to look at the central tension that is tearing through modern corporate culture right now.
Right, the survival mechanism debate.
Exactly. In this incredibly fast-paced, heavily remote workplace we're in, how should introverts actually operate? Do you rely on meticulously crafted, pre-planned communication scripts to protect yourself?
Or do you throw away that safety net and force yourself into spontaneous, messy, real-time human interaction?
Right. Scripts versus spontaneity. But before we answer that, we really need to look at the massive pillars of change that have redefined the environment. Like, why are we even having this debate in 2026?
Well, the workplace hasn't just evolved, it's been radically reshaped by structural forces. I mean, we're dealing with ubiquitous remote work, which completely changes the physics of presence.
Yeah, totally changes it. You're not physically sitting next to someone anymore.
Right, and then we're integrating with AI collaboration tools on a daily basis. That changes the value of raw data processing. Plus, we're operating within highly multicultural teams spanning, 12 different time zones.
Which completely shifts the linguistic baseline.
Exactly. But perhaps the most important shift is the massive move toward asynchronous communication.
Async communication. I mean, the absolute death of the quick sync meeting, right?
Oh, thankfully, yes.
Instead of a 30-minute video call where someone just talks at you, we are collaborating on shared documents or leaving highly specific voice notes that someone else processes on their own time.
Precisely. And in this new environment, the rules of influence have just flipped entirely.
Flipped how? Exactly. Like, charisma is dead.
Well, no, human charm hasn't evaporated from the human condition. Charisma still matters, but it has been permanently dethroned. The new rulers of the professional world are clarity and emotional intelligence. They are the absolute baseline for success now, mainly because the medium of communication demands it.
I'm trying to picture how that shift actually plays out in real time, because if I think about the old corporate meeting, it was basically like a live theater performance.
Yes. A perfect way to describe it.
Whoever could project their voice all the way to the back row,
Really?
whoever had the biggest hand gestures, whoever could interrupt with the most confidence, they just won the scene.
They won by pure volume and presence.
But the modern workplace, with all this async communication we're talking about, meaning, you're leaving a detailed comment on a design file at 2 p.m., and the lead engineer in Tokyo reads it at 9 p.m., it's no longer theater at all.
No, because it lacks the immediate feedback loop of theater. You can't perform for an audience that isn't actively watching you.
Exactly. It is much more like a strategic chess match. You don't need to stand up and shout your move. You just need to make the right move. And the move itself carries the weight.
That analogy captures the structural transition perfectly. And because the structure has changed, the culture has changed right along with it.
So people are finally rejecting that old style.
Oh, a massive cultural rejection. Toxic positivity is a great example. The expectation that everyone must constantly radiate boundless enthusiasm, that is completely gone.
Thank goodness.
Right. Performative leadership, where managers would call meetings simply to be seen managing, is now viewed as an active drain on company resources.
Yeah, no one has the patience for the endless synergy talk anymore.
Exactly. Workplaces today value authenticity and ruthless efficiency over sheer volume.
Okay, let's actually look at the language that has emerged from this because, language always reveals what a culture truly values.
The linguistic shift is fascinating.
It really is. We're seeing this entirely new professional slang take hold, and this is where the introvert vindication really starts to become tangible.
Right, because it proves the culture isn't just tolerating introverts now. It is actively praising them. Like this term that's gaining massive traction right now. Low energy efficient.
I gotta say, low energy efficient sounds like the marketing copy on the side of a highly rated refrigerator.
It really does sound like a home appliance.
It's just a funny way to describe a human being. But the underlying meaning is actually profound, isn't it?
It really is. It essentially means a professional who doesn't burn out the room with chaotic, frantic energy.
Right.
They don't require constant stimulation or constant attention to process information. They take the data in quietly, process it internally, and output a highly refined result.
So it's basically the ultimate compliment now. It means you aren't creating a debris field of emotional exhaustion around you.
Exactly. And paired with that is this other term we keep seeing in the research, low ego.
Being humble, not attention-seeking. But
No.
critically, being high impact, right?
Yes. So you have leaders saying, we need to put her on this critical project. She's low ego but high impact.
Meaning she'll produce undeniable results without demanding a parade in her honor.
Precisely. And then if you look at how the culture describes the opposite behavior, the remnants of the extrovert ideal, it's really telling.
Oh yeah, there's that one word that has transitioned from informal slang into a legitimate corporate insult. Yap.
Yep. Yes.
Just a few years ago, yap was literally the sound a small dog made at the mailman. Now it's the ultimate critique of a manager.
It is. You'll hear employees complain, we had a critical deadline, but the director just yapped for 45 minutes.
It's the vocal equivalent of empty calories.
Exactly. It has become a derogatory term for performative leadership, talking excessively without delivering any real substance.
And what do people want instead? They want what is being called the quiet operators.
Yeah.
The people carrying the structural weight of the project without announcing every single time they lift a finger.
The ones doing the actual heavy lifting.
Right. So if you are listening to this right now and you have ever dragged yourself home from an office feeling biologically drained to your core, not by the actual work, but by the pressure to perform fake enthusiasm, this is your vindication.
The world has finally realized that the person quietly taking notes might actually be driving the entire operation forward.
Okay, but which brings us to the operational reality. The culture has shifted, yes. The language has changed.
But the day-to-day interactions still exist.
Exactly. You still have to navigate complex human dynamics, pitch ideas, resolve conflicts. So how does an introvert actually do that in this new landscape?
And this is where we dive into the first major strategy from the deep dive, the use of social scripts.
Yes, social scripts. And to really grasp how powerful these scripts can be, we need to look at this incredible case study from the source material about a software engineer based in Toronto. It reads almost like a corporate thriller.
Oh, I love this case study. The perfect distillation of how perception and reality disconnect in the workplace.
So picture this environment. High-growth tech company, constantly moving fast. And there is this software engineer who, for almost 2 full years, barely speaks a word during cross-functional meetings.
A total ghost. Verbally,
Yeah, he does his coding, he submits his work, but verbally, nothing.
and we know what happens in a vacuum of communication, right? People fill the void with their own assumptions.
Because those old biases still linger in people's subconscious. His colleagues start building narratives around his silence. Some assume he's just painfully, debilitatingly shy.
Others assume he's completely disengaged from the broader mission.
Right. A few executives even quietly write him off, assuming he lacks any capacity for leadership or strategic vision. 2 years is a really long time to let a negative narrative solidify.
It is, but then the environment destabilizes.
Oh, completely. The company hits a massive existential product crisis. The system is failing, clients are threatening to leave, and a massive emergency all-hands meeting is called.
This is exactly the type of situation where the old loudest voice dynamics usually take over.
Yes. Extroverted leaders are talking over each other, whiteboarding frantically, throwing out half-baked ideas in real time just to be seen doing something. The noise level is just chaotic.
It's peak cognitive overload for the entire room.
And right in the middle of this panic, this historically silent engineer calmly unmutes himself.
The ghost speaks.
He steps into the fray, and in less than 2 minutes, he completely diagnoses the structural flaw, summarizes the cascading effects perfectly, and proposes a highly technical, completely viable solution that literally nobody else had seen.
Less than 2 minutes to resolve the crisis that a room full of shouting executives couldn't crack. That is the very definition of high-impact communication.
It completely altered the trajectory of his career overnight. But the real lesson here isn't just that he was smart. The twist is what happened behind the scenes.
The preparation.
Exactly. When executives later asked him how he managed to stay so incredibly poised under that kind of pressure, they discovered he wasn't just sitting there being passive for 2 years.
He hadn't been avoiding interaction at all. He had been studying it.
Yes. He had spent years meticulously building what he called communication frameworks. He was optimizing his interactions before he ever stepped into a room.
He was engineering his communication the exact same way he engineered his code.
He had built this internal database of scripts. He knew exactly how to phrase a disagreement without triggering someone's ego. He knew the exact sentence structure to use when presenting a novel solution.
He didn't invent that 2-minute speech out of thin air. He deployed a pre-built framework.
Right. And because he did that, he now leads a massive global AI division.
Which raises a really fundamental question about how we view professional development. Is relying on prepared scripts a weakness, like a crutch for people who can't think on their feet?
Or is it actually a profound superpower?
Exactly. And to understand why it's a superpower, we really have to look mechanistically at what is happening in the human brain during these interactions. We have to talk about cognitive overload.
Oh, let's dig deeply into this. Because, using a script to avoid cognitive overload makes sense abstractly. But what is actually happening neurologically when an introvert freezes up in a meeting? Because I've felt it. It's like my brain just hits a brick wall.
Yeah, what you're experiencing is essentially a bottleneck in your prefrontal cortex.
A bottleneck.
Right. The modern workplace is an absolute onslaught of data. You are sitting on a video call. You are managing your facial expressions to appear attentive. You are reading the subtle body language of 4 different people on screen.
While actively listening to a complex financial presentation.
Yes. And then suddenly someone asks you a loaded, highly political question about project timelines.
And in that exact moment, a Slack notification pops up in my peripheral vision just to make it worse.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Your working memory, the part of your brain responsible for holding and manipulating information in real time, has a strict capacity limit.
Okay, so it gets full.
It gets overwhelmed. When you try to process the visual data, the social dynamics, the political implications of the question, and then try to simultaneously invent the perfect grammatical and diplomatic sentence to respond, the system crashes.
Wow.
That is cognitive overload. Your brain literally does not have the processing power available to invent a new sentence from scratch while managing the threat response triggered by being put on the spot.
So using scripts to avoid that overload is essentially like using a computer's RAM.
Yes.
Like, if my mental RAM is entirely eaten up by trying to invent the perfect combination of verbs and nouns, I have zero processing power left to actually listen to what the person is asking me.
That is a phenomenal way to visualize it.
But if I have a script, I am offloading the grammar so my brain can actually process the room.
The script acts as an external hard drive for your social responses. By having pre-planned phrases ready to go, you bypass the need to use your working memory for sentence construction. You instantly stabilize your cognitive load.
I love that. Give us some concrete examples, though. Like, what do these mental RAM savers look like in practice? Because we aren't talking about memorizing a Shakespearean monologue here, right?
Not at all. These are highly modular functional phrases.
Like what?
For instance, if someone presents an idea and you need a moment to analyze it without sitting in awkward silence, the script is simply, "That's an interesting perspective. Can we unpack the second point a bit more?"
Oh, I use that one all the time.
Or, if you're asked a question you don't know the answer to, instead of panicking and rambling, the script is, "I want to give you a precise answer on that. Let me review the latest numbers and circle back this afternoon."
Let me circle back. It's so simple, but in the heat of the moment, it's an absolute lifesaver.
It really is.
It buys you time, it establishes presence, and it proves you heard the question, all without requiring immediate, flawless analysis.
Most importantly, it creates safety for you.
Okay, I see the mechanics of it, but I have to push back here for a second because this is where my own anxiety flares up a bit.
Let's hear it.
If I am sitting in a high-stakes strategy meeting and I'm just relying on a menu of pre-planned phrases, aren't I just acting?
Acting.
Yeah, like if I say, I'm not fully convinced yet, but I see the logic, when internally I'm thinking, this is a terrible idea. Isn't a script just a very fancy, socially acceptable way of saying you're faking it?
I see where you're going.
Doesn't that violate the whole idea of the authentic 2026 workplace we just talked about?
It's a highly valid concern, and it's where a lot of people misunderstand the purpose of scripting. We have to completely reframe what a script is doing in that moment.
Okay, reframe it for me.
You are not faking your core belief. You are using a tool of translation.
Translation? How so?
Think about the concept of burnout. Burnout isn't just about working too many hours. It's about the extreme emotional exhaustion of constantly masking and regulating your reactions.
Oh, totally.
Scripts protect your energy. They are an energetic defense mechanism. But more importantly, they ensure what we call alignment, which is a shared, accurate understanding between two people.
Right.
If you just blurt out your raw, unedited thought like, "This is a terrible idea," the other person's ego gets triggered. Their amygdala fires, they get defensive, and communication just stops.
You haven't achieved alignment, you've achieved conflict.
Precisely. You haven't communicated effectively at all.
So the script isn't hiding my opinion, it's providing a safe vehicle to deliver my opinion so it actually gets heard.
Exactly. You are translating your internal analytical truth into an external social reality. You aren't faking it. You are using a pre-tested structural bridge to get your real point across safely.
Okay, that reframes it completely for me. And there is another massive demographic where this concept of scripts as translation isn't just a helpful psychological trick, it is an absolute professional lifeline.
Are you talking about non-native English speakers?
Yes, non-native English speakers operating in high-pressure international corporate environments.
This is perhaps the most critical application of scripting in the modern workplace. Because if we talk about cognitive overload for a native speaker, we have to multiply that by a massive factor for a non-native speaker.
Because they are already running a translation software in their head just to understand the conversation in the first place.
Exactly. The cognitive tax of real-time translation is enormous. When you are translating complex technical concepts in your head while managing the pressure of speaking in a second or third language.
While also trying to read the cultural nuances of a multicultural Zoom room.
Right. The risk of cognitive freeze is exceptionally high.
So having structural scripts ready to deploy phrases like, if I understand correctly, your main concern is X, that must dramatically reduce the anxiety.
It reduces anxiety. It dramatically improves perceived fluency. And crucially, it prevents awkward cultural misunderstandings.
Because different cultures have vastly different norms. Right?
Oh, incredibly different norms around interrupting, disagreeing, or showing deference. A well-prepared script acts as a universally understood diplomatic protocol.
I love that phrase, diplomatic protocol.
It allows a brilliant professional whose English might not be perfect to safely and assertively inject their expertise into a conversation. A single, well-deployed script literally saves meetings from derailing into confusion.
It levels the playing field, it takes the cognitive tax of grammar out of the equation so the actual intellectual value can shine through.
That's exactly what it does.
It's undeniable that scripts keep you safe, they protect your working memory, and they help you navigate complex cultural dynamics.
Yes, but,
and this is the massive pivot in this discussion, if we take that logic, the idea that scripts are perfectly safe, and we push it to its extreme limit, we run into a very modern, very subtle danger.
The dark side is scripting.
Exactly. This leads us to the other side of the debate. What happens when you overscript?
You run into the uncanny valley of human communication. The defense mechanism stops protecting you and actually starts isolating you.
We call it the danger of the ChatGPT voice.
Ooh, the ChatGPT voice.
And there is a phenomenal cautionary tale from the sources about a management consultant that perfectly illustrates how dangerous this can be for your career.
The consultant who achieved technical perfection at the cost of human connection.
Yes. So this consultant was brilliant. She had optimized her communication frameworks to the absolute maximum. She never stumbled over her words. She never used filler words like or like.
Not a single disfluency.
None. Every answer she gave at a meeting was flawlessly structured, perfectly diplomatic, and packed with industry terminology. She was effectively bulletproof.
On paper, she was the ideal communicator.
On paper. But in reality, a deeply unsettling dynamic started to emerge. Her coworkers started making this highly specific joke behind her back.
Which is never good.
No. They would listen to her present, and then they'd whisper to each other, "She talks like a LinkedIn post."
Wow. Which is a devastating critique in today's culture.
It is brutal because, I mean, what does a LinkedIn post sound like? It sounds algorithmically generated. It sounds like someone trying to hit all the right keywords without exposing any actual humanity.
Completely sanitized.
Exactly. And the problem didn't stop with office gossip. It escalated to her clients. Her communication was technically flawless, but her clients actually started pulling away. They didn't trust her.
Let's dissect the psychology of that mistrust. Why do we recoil from perfection?
Yeah, why is that?
Earlier, we talked about scripts acting as emotional armor against cognitive overload.
Right.
But armor has a secondary characteristic. It is completely rigid. It doesn't yield.
Right.
And when you wear heavy armor, it inherently creates a barrier, a massive distance between you and the person you are interacting with.
It's a wall. You are talking to the wall, not the person behind it.
Precisely. If every single answer you give feels rehearsed, if every joke you make feels meticulously calculated for maximum safety.
And if every reaction is delayed by a fraction of a second because you are constantly consulting your internal script database before showing emotion.
Yes. The human brain picks up on that. Unconsciously, the listener's brain registers an anomaly. It signals, I am not talking to an authentic human being. I am talking to a representative. I am talking to a PR machine.
And you cannot build trust with a PR machine.
You absolutely cannot.
It's what psychologists call performative communication. She wasn't actually communicating to connect with her clients. She was performing her competence for them.
She was putting on a play where she was the star consultant.
And ironically, that exact performance destroyed her credibility. People would rather trust a messy human than a flawless robot.
Because in complex, high-stakes environments, teams need to know you can adapt. They want communication that feels emotionally real. Over-scripted communication signals that you are hiding something, even if you're only hiding your own anxiety.
So how do you recover from that? Because this consultant did manage to turn it around through intense leadership coaching.
She did, yes.
And the solution wasn't to talk more or to become wild and unpredictable. She changed one highly specific thing about her linguistic choices. She dropped the armor.
She embraced vulnerability in her vocabulary.
Exactly. The coaching revealed this massive contrast in her before and after communication. Before, when she recognized a problem between two departments, she would deploy this heavy, scripted, heavily armored phrase.
What did she say?
She would say, let's leverage cross-functional alignment to optimize our deliverables.
Oh, a classic buzzword salad.
Right.
It is completely frictionless, but it carries zero actual meaning. It's using complex vocabulary to avoid saying anything real.
It's noise designed to sound like strategy. So she was coached to replace that scripted noise with something incredibly simple, slightly messy, and profoundly human.
Let me guess, she just stated the actual problem.
Yep. Instead of the buzzword salad, she just looked at the client and said, I think our teams are slightly disconnected.
The difference in impact there is staggering.
It's night and day.
Let's leverage cross-functional alignment is a performance. It's a shield. I think our teams are slightly disconnected. Is a genuine, vulnerable observation. It acknowledges a flaw. It invites the other person to say, you know what? You're right, we are disconnected. It invites collaboration instead of compliance.
And the result for her was immediate. Her client suddenly trusted her again because she finally sounded like a person capable of seeing reality rather than a person trying to manage a brand.
Which is exactly what people want.
So, if you are listening and taking notes on this deep dive, write this down in massive letters. Clarity beats performance every single time.
It's a profound takeaway, and it perfectly sets up the counter-argument to the pro-scripting camp.
Right, the pure improvisation camp.
Exactly. Many communication coaches argue that introverts rely too heavily on scripts, not because they are optimizing, but simply because they are terrified of uncertainty.
And by systematically avoiding uncertainty, they are missing out on the immense transformative benefits of real improvisation.
Because improvisation isn't just winging it, right? It's not just showing up and rambling. There is a whole neurological skill set being trained when you improvise.
Absolutely. When you force yourself to speak without a script, you are rapidly training your adaptability. You are building emotional resilience.
You are forcing yourself into active, deep listening because you have to respond to what is actually happening in the room, not what you predicted would happen.
Because, let's face the reality of the workplace. Conversations are inherently messy. Humans interrupt each other constantly.
Constantly. An agenda can be thrown out the window in the first 5 minutes of a meeting.
Right. A client will ask a completely unexpected, highly emotional question that no script could ever anticipate. No script survives contact with reality.
Precisely. If your entire professional identity is tied to your preparation, you will shatter when the environment becomes unpredictable.
So if I'm an introvert, I feel like I'm looking at a massive trap here.
How so?
Well, on one hand, scripts keep my cognitive overload in check and stop me from freezing up, but they threaten to turn me into a robotic LinkedIn post that nobody trusts. On the other hand, pure, unscripted improvisation creates authentic connection, but it is the exact neurological trigger that drains my energy and causes my brain to crash. How on earth do I win this?
You don't choose either extreme. The most sophisticated communicators use a brilliant middle ground, a concept that completely resolves the tension.
I am absolutely obsessed with this concept. It's called micro-improv.
Micro-improv. It is the perfect synthesis. The elegance of it lies in its scale.
The fundamental idea here is that introverts do not need to master full improvisation.
No, not at all.
You don't need the exhausting ability to walk into a boardroom with zero preparation and just riff for an hour like a stand-up comedian. That is an extrovert's game, and trying to play it will only lead to burnout.
What you actually need is controlled spontaneity.
Controlled spontaneity. The tension between those two words is where the magic happens. Think of it like a jazz performance.
Well, I like where this is going.
When a jazz quartet goes on stage, they aren't just making up random noise, they have sheet music. That sheet music is your script. It's your framework, your preparation. You know the key, you know the tempo, you know the basic structure of the song.
Right.
But micro-improv is the conscious decision to put the sheet music down for just like 5 to 10 seconds. You step forward, you play one single, unscripted, highly emotional solo note right in the middle of the song, and then you seamlessly return to the sheet music.
That is a beautiful analogy because it highlights that the improvisation is anchored in preparation.
Exactly.
So what does that one solo note look like in a corporate Zoom meeting?
It looks like tiny, deliberate deviations from the plan. It's listening to a presentation, and instead of waiting for your scripted turn to speak, you ask one unscripted, deeply curious follow-up question based entirely on a specific word the presenter just used.
It proves you are actively processing their reality, not just waiting to deliver yours.
Yes. Or, crucially, it's choosing to react emotionally instead of analytically.
Expand on that a bit. The emotional reaction versus the analytical one.
Okay, say a project manager announces that a major software launch is being delayed by 2 months.
A nightmare scenario.
Exactly. Now, the scripted, heavily armored, analytical response is to say, let's review the critical path data to understand the bottleneck.
Safe, but very cold.
Right. But micro-improv is taking 3 seconds to just be human and saying, wow, that is incredibly frustrating. I know how hard your team worked on this.
It's an empathetic strike.
Yes. Or it's telling a 10-second personal anecdote that relates to the topic. These are tiny, low-stakes moments of spontaneity. But because they are unscripted, they carry immense emotional weight.
They break through the armor.
And as we know, connection builds trust and trust builds influence.
You know, if we zoom out and connect this to the macro landscape of 2026, we have to ask a vital question. Why is this specific blend, this controlled spontaneity, this micro-improv so disproportionately valued right now? Why is it the golden ticket?
Because of the tech, right?
The answer is chillingly clear. And yes, it has to do with the technological reality we all live in. It's because of AI.
The massive, omniscient elephant in every single corporate boardroom right now.
Exactly. Look at what artificial intelligence can generate effortlessly, flawlessly, and instantaneously today. AI can write a comprehensive market analysis.
It can draft perfectly diplomatic, highly aligned emails.
It can generate meeting summaries, financial reports, and even full presentation scripts with zero grammatical errors.
It's incredible.
AI does the polished, technical, heavily scripted work perfectly. It never stumbles. It never forgets a data point. It never gets nervous.
So if I'm an employee trying to compete by being perfectly polished and flawlessly scripted, I'm competing against a machine that will beat me every single time.
You're playing a game you literally cannot win. If AI has commoditized perfection, what is left for the human professional?
Humanity. Messiness.
Exactly. What becomes rare and therefore incredibly valuable is genuine human presence.
The imperfections.
Yes. The professionals who get promoted, who lead teams, who stand out today, aren't the ones who can deliver a flawless robotic monologue. We have software for that.
Right.
The people who stand out are the ones who can listen deeply to nuance, who can communicate calmly under chaotic pressure, who can react naturally and empathetically. It's the people who can make other human beings feel psychologically safe.
Let's really drill down into that concept because psychological safety is thrown around a lot, but understanding its actual mechanics is vital here.
At its core, psychological safety is an environment where individuals feel completely safe to speak honestly.
Right.
It means they know neurologically that they will not be punished, humiliated, or marginalized for making a mistake, for asking a seemingly basic question, or for offering an unconventional idea.
And to illustrate what absolute, undeniable psychological safety looks like in practice, we have to talk about the story of the 11-second pause.
Oh, this story. It is an absolute masterclass in modern executive presence.
For my money, this is the most powerful, paradigm-shifting example we have of the new communication landscape.
Because it violates every rule of the 20th century extrovert playbook.
Completely. So, picture the tension in this room. It's a massive global investor meeting, extremely high stakes, millions of dollars are on the line.
Everyone is on edge.
And the CEO of this major tech firm is standing on stage under the bright lights. And suddenly, investor stands up and asks a highly aggressive, deeply hostile, and completely unscripted question about rumors of massive upcoming layoffs.
The temperature in the room instantly drops.
You can just feel the air get sucked out of the room.
Now, in the old corporate world, that exact moment is the trigger for the CEO to deploy maximum heavy armor, a defensive, aggressive script.
Right, they'd get loud.
They would raise their voice, they would adopt an authoritative posture, and they would unleash a torrent of jargon about leveraging dynamic synergies and optimizing the workforce matrix simply to steamroll the questioner and regain dominance.
Attack the question to protect the ego.
Exactly.
And everyone in that room braced themselves for that exact defensive, heavily scripted PR spin. But instead, this CEO did something completely radical. Something terrifying.
He paused.
He paused. And he didn't just take a quick breath to collect his thoughts. He paused for 11 full seconds.
I want the listener to actually visualize that. Think about how agonizingly long 11 seconds is when 1,000 people are staring at you in dead silence, waiting for you to defend your company.
Oh, it's brutal. 1, 2, 3, 4.
5, 6, 7.
It feels like an absolute eternity. It goes against every instinct we have to fill the void, to defend ourselves immediately.
The tension in the room apparently became almost unbearable.
People were shifting in their seats, but the
Okay.
CEO just stood there, breathing quietly, looking at the person who asked the question. And then, after 11 seconds, he didn't attack.
No.
He calmly leaned into the microphone and said, "That is a completely fair concern. Let me answer you honestly."
That clip went viral internally across the entire corporate world. And the analysis of why it went viral is the key to everything we're discussing today.
Why did it?
It did not go viral because he eventually had a clever, perfectly phrased comeback. It went viral because professionals are utterly exhausted by fake certainty.
Fake certainty. The endless parade of leaders pretending they have all the answers.
Yes, by pausing for 11 seconds, that CEO demonstrated immense, unshakable psychological safety.
He proved that he didn't need to panic.
He proved he didn't need to attack. He proved that his ego was secure enough to hold the space, process the difficult emotion, and respond as a human being. He lowered the collective cortisol level of the entire room.
And that ability, the ability to create quiet space, to remain deeply calm in chaotic environments, to listen before reacting, and to ask thoughtful questions instead of issuing rapid-fire commands, these are all classic defining introvert strengths.
Which perfectly explains the massive demographic shift we are seeing at the highest levels of business. Introverts are quietly coming to dominate modern leadership.
It's true. The old stereotype, the leader who dominates every meeting, who speaks the loudest, who controls every narrative thread, and who must always appear invincible, is fading rapidly into obsolescence.
Good riddance.
Right. Today's strongest leaders avoid unnecessary drama. They are the quiet operators. They are the thermostats, not the smoke alarms.
So, having covered the grand theory, having established that scripts keep you safe from cognitive overload but risk making you robotic, and that improvisation builds connection but drains your energy, we really must bring this down to the ground.
Let's get tactical.
What does this mean for you, the listener, as you navigate your actual career this Monday morning?
Well, the smartest communicators in 2026 recognize that this debate between scripts and spontaneity is ultimately a draw. You cannot survive on just one. You have to combine them.
You need a hybrid strategy. You need the structural preparation combined with high emotional intelligence.
I love how this strategy is framed in the source document. Think of scripts as your training wheels, not your permanent identity.
That's a great way to look at it.
You use the scripts to get moving, to find your balance, and to prevent yourself from falling over when the pressure hits. But you have to build the courage to take those training wheels off when you need to make a sharp, spontaneous turn to connect with someone.
So let's move out of the theoretical and into the highly tactical. We have a practical blueprint.
A survival guide for the modern introvert. Let's break down this actionable advice step by step, starting before you even enter the room.
It starts with how you prepare, which perfectly aligns with our earlier point about preparation being a superpower. But the key here is bounded preparation. The rule is minimalist.
The minimalist preparation rule is profoundly liberating. If you suffer from pre-meeting anxiety, write this down. Before any meeting, you prepare exactly 2 key points, 1 question, and 1 opinion.
We call it the 2-1-1 rule.
That is it. You stop preparing after that.
The psychological beauty of the 2-1-1 rule is its restraint. Introverts often fall into the trap of over-preparing, trying to build a 10-page mental manifesto to cover every possible outcome.
Oh, I've been there.
That causes cognitive overload before the meeting even starts. You do not need to dominate the room to have a high-impact presence.
Let's break down why those specific elements work. 2 points. Why 2? Because bringing 5 points dilutes your message. 2 points are memorable. And why specifically 1 question?
Because a deeply insightful question is often more powerful than a statement. A question turns a monologue into a dialogue.
It shifts the spotlight off of you, which introverts love, and onto the group's collective intelligence.
While still establishing you as the strategic facilitator of the conversation.
Exactly. And the 1 opinion, that is your anchor. It proves you have a perspective. If you deliver 2 solid data points and ask 1 complex question that changes the direction of the conversation and offer 1 considered opinion, you have objectively contributed more value than the extrovert who yapped for 20 minutes straight.
You have maximized your impact while minimizing your energy expenditure.
Okay, so now let's move into the actual meeting. How do you deploy this preparation smoothly?
This introduces a fantastic linguistic tool called soft entry phrases.
Soft entry phrases are essentially the diplomatic, high EQ scripts of 2026. They are designed to lower the friction of entering a conversation.
Instead of waiting for a perfectly silent gap that will never come.
Right. You use phrases like, can I build on that point for a second? Or one pattern I'm noticing is, or I may be looking at this wrong, but...
Notice the mechanics of can I build on that. It is a brilliant psychological move. In the old dynamic, to get a word in, you often had to interrupt someone and say, here is my idea, which inherently creates ego friction.
You are tearing their idea down to erect yours?
Exactly. But when you ask, can I build on that? You are doing the exact opposite. You are validating their contribution. You are inflating their ego and then safely attaching your insight to the foundation they just built.
It is collaborative rather than combative. You are entering the flow of the conversation smoothly rather than trying to break the door down.
It's a game changer.
Okay, so we've conquered the Zoom meeting. Now let's tackle the absolute boss level of introvert anxiety, the arena of pure terror, networking events.
Oh, historically, networking events have felt entirely artificial. They are designed around the extrovert ideal of rapid, superficial interactions.
Standing in a loud room, holding a lukewarm drink, trying to invent clever things to say to strangers, it's awful.
It's draining.
But the tactical advice here is profound in its simplicity, and it takes the pressure completely off. The directive is stop trying to perform.
Take off the heavy armor. Stop trying to be the most interesting person in the room.
Right. If you walk into a networking event thinking your job is to be a charismatic guru or a stand-up comedian, your social battery will drain in 10 minutes. You will be exhausted.
So what's the shift?
The strategy is to shift your entire goal. Your goal is not to perform, your goal is to investigate. Ask highly specific questions, listen with genuine intensity, and rely entirely on your natural curiosity.
There is an underlying psychological truth here. Human beings are desperate to be heard.
They really are.
People rarely remember exactly what you said, and they almost never remember how entertaining you were. But they deeply, permanently remember how you made them feel.
Yes.
If you use your introverted superpower of deep listening to make a stranger feel truly understood, you have won. You have networked more successfully than the person handing out 50 business cards while looking over everyone's shoulder.
That is such great advice. And finally, this blueprint offers highly specific, actionable advice for non-native English speakers, which ties everything together.
This is a vital paradigm shift. For non-native speakers, the advice is to radically change what you are optimizing for. Stop focusing your cognitive energy on achieving perfect, flawless grammar.
What should they focus on instead?
Allocate that energy toward three things: rhythm, clarity, and confidence.
Rhythm, clarity, confidence. Why do those matter more than grammar?
Because of how the human brain processes trust. The rule is, a slightly imperfect sentence spoken with natural rhythm and confidence sounds infinitely better than robotic, grammatically perfect hesitation.
Ah, I see.
This ties directly back to the danger of the ChatGPT voice. If a non-native speaker is so obsessed with internal grammar checks that they speak in a halting, overly rigid, perfectly armored way, the listener's brain registers distance.
But if they speak fluidly?
If they speak fluidly, with emotional cadence and confidence, even if they use the wrong preposition or mix up a verb tense, the listener's brain registers authenticity and connection. The underlying humanity completely covers the linguistic gap.
It's the micro-improv of language. The imperfection is the connection. So, bringing this entire vast landscape together, what does all this mean for the future of professional communication?
We are looking at a dramatic, irreversible shift.
The contrast is clear. The old, rigid, armored corporate style sounded like this. Per my previous email, we should optimize stakeholder alignment moving forward to leverage our synergies.
Maximum jargon, heavy armor, pure performance, zero substance.
But in 2026, professionals, executives, clients, peers vastly prefer a completely different tone. They are desperate to hear. I think we need clear communication between teams. What am I missing?
It is simple. It is direct. It is undeniably human.
That is the ultimate trifecta. To synthesize everything we've pulled from this deep dive into the changing workplace, introverts do not need to become extroverts.
No.
That is the fundamental toxic myth that has finally been shattered. You do not need a personality transplant to succeed. You never did.
What you need are systematic approaches that respect, rather than fight, how your neurology naturally operates.
Yes. Using scripts as your mental RAM, your training wheels, to manage the cognitive overload of the modern office.
Right.
Utilizing the 2-1-1 framework to ensure your presence is high impact without being high exhaustion.
And then taking those wheels off.
Exactly. Finding the internal courage to take those training wheels off. Embracing the micro-improv to share a messy, spontaneous thought. Having the absolute confidence to pause for 11 seconds in a room full of chaos to demonstrate real psychological safety.
Right.
The goal of professional communication is no longer to sound impossibly impressive. It is to sound authentic while remaining highly effective.
It is a delicate balance moving between structure and spontaneity, but it is deeply achievable once you understand the mechanics. And there is a final lingering thought, extrapolating from the reality of artificial intelligence, that I think we must leave you with today.
Oh, lay it on us. Where is this all heading?
Well, we have established that AI is rapidly annexing all the territory of perfect, polished communication.
Right.
The flawless emails, the comprehensive data reports, the perfectly structured, grammatically invincible summaries, that domain now belongs permanently to machines.
It's gone.
Which forces us to ask a profound question about the future of human value. As AI communication becomes ubiquitous and perfectly flawless, will our slight stumbles, our 11-second pauses, our micro-improvs, and our slightly messy, grammatically imperfect sentences actually become the ultimate premium proof of our humanity?
Wow.
Could it be that your absolute biggest advantage in the future workplace is simply the undeniable fact that you don't sound perfect?
Your biggest advantage is your imperfection. Because imperfection proves you're real, that is something incredibly powerful to think about the next time you hesitate to speak up in a meeting.